Welcome again to Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. You can check us out at InsideTheLine.org. You can email us at realstoriesbyrealcops@gmail.com. We appreciate you listening, and please share. Dale Lawrence and Dave Rattigan here, as always. And we're joined by two guests today from one of the fine towns in Massachusetts, Lawrence, Massachusetts, known by many, particularly put on the map recently or in the last few years by former President Donald Trump. And we're going to talk.
Whoa. What did he do? I didn't even hear that.
I think he called it, what did he call Lawrence? Was it a hellhole or was it a shithole?
Wasn't it a heroin hub also?
Heroin hub. It was a heroin hub. It might not have been a shithole or a hellhole. It was a heroin hub.
Well, yeah, it mixes right in there.
Yeah, which caused a lot of resentment from drug gangs in Lowell who felt slighted. So
let me set the scene first, because obviously we're an audio podcast, Dave. If you just envision a biker gang.
Yes.
That's kind of what our two guests look like.
Yeah.
A very pleasant biker gang, though, non-violent.
Yeah, they
find violence.
Farrington is on my left, and Frankie Bravo, old friend, is on our right, recovered from your heart attack.
Yes.
And going to be with us for a while until your wife finally decides to smother you with a pillow. Oh. We're going to talk about critical incident stress debriefing today. And Dale, why don't we start off with you? What is critical incident stress debriefing?
Oh, Dave, that's like a test question that I didn't prepare for.
Sorry, I could ask one of these guys. You want me?
What's that?
I could ask one of these guys.
Well, I can answer it, Dave, but we got a couple of experts in it, Dave, so I'd like to defer to them.
All right, fine.
I don't want to give the wrong answer, Dave.
Oh, you think he'll give the wrong answer, Frankie?
Nah, I'm pretty sure he's good with it, but I'll start it off. It's a relatively new concept that chiefs of police are starting to embrace. Whereas if there's a major incident such as a shooting, or police suicide, or in my case it was a heart attack. In Carl's case it was a line of duty, massive line of duty injury.
So this is stressing cops, and this is. Am I correct that this is something horrible happens, and they say to you, "There's somebody here for you to see. We want you to see the department shrink."
Well, I was more the subject of their debriefing. I was not involved in that debriefing.
You were the subject of the debriefing?
Well, I guess after my incident, they debriefed, was there a dozen or so guys all involved? And I was still sitting in the hospital for 3 weeks down in Boston, so I wasn't around for that. But I heard it went well, and they had a good time.
So this sounds... so this is what it sounds like to me. It sounds like Dirty Harry goes off and does something, and after all the people shot and the broken glass and the smoke clears, they say, "Harry, go see the department shrink." And he says, "I'm not going to go to that department shrink. I'm Dirty Harry." I mean, the shrinking cop movies have been around since the 1970s.
It's actually the anti-cop shrink. Go see the cop shrink. It's basically don't have to worry. The powers that be, they don't get to ask questions on how it went or who really seems messed up or whatever.
So there's real confidentiality.
There is real confidentiality, which is first and foremost. When I got on, it was basically, got a shooting call? Suck it up, do your report, and get back out on the road.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. We're going to get to that whole attitude in a second. But I'm wondering now, what did Farrington do that made him the subject of an incident?
I think it was what was done to him. He gave me a little briefing up front.
Something was done to you?
Yeah, somewhat. Things got a little squirrely, and the squirrel didn't dodge.
I sent them on a call.
You sent them on a call, and then what? And then what happened? Things got a little squirrely. So far, you're describing a typical weekend for Dale.
Frankie was dispatching that evening. I got a call. I was a patrol officer, so I got a call in my sector about a breaking and entering in progress. So I was kind of like slow rolling it because I wasn't sure where everybody was, but I was going there. And it was an unoccupied house. Neighbor, somebody had called in. So I was kind of waiting for a backup. So just prior to my arrival, the city rover did show up with his rookie partner. So I hear that, and then I step on it, and I get right there.
So there are 3 people at the scene. Three
people on scene.
Yep.
The other 2 officers confront subjects leaving the back of the apartment building. There's a small parking lot with maybe a dozen parking spots. I see his car parked out front. As I pull in, I see him in the driveway confronting this subject that was just kind of backing out behind the building in a vehicle. Turned out there was 3 subjects in there. Guy's slow rolling it. He's just pretending I don't see you. He had the blinders on. So they were trying to get his attention. They tapped on the door, the hood a couple times, and one of the officers reached over, grabbed the door, and as soon as he did that, the guy floored it. So I just pulled in, saw something going on. I stopped quick, kind of, I'm at the driveway. I'll stop right here. As I step out, this is now partially memory, partially surveillance video. As I step out, the vehicle speeds up and kind of does a little button hook because he was almost head with me, aiming towards the exit. He kind of swings out to the left, his left, and turns for the gate. I had just stepped out of the cruiser. So his vehicle then hits me. I'm on the driver's side of his vehicle, right about where the tire is. So as he's hitting me, he's pushing me back into my cruiser. During this time, we believe that his tire caught my foot. So my left foot got probably 75 to 80% ripped off. Breaking the bones, the talus, the cartilage, the blood supply to my foot.
I need to stress the brief right now just to listen to the story.
You know something? I'm looking at the way this guy's built, and I'm listening to the story, and I'm thinking, I wonder if he dented the cruiser.
Oh, a little bit. I got pictures of both.
We have photos too.
So as that's happening, my knees, prime victim also, and now I need a double knee replacement still, now that my foot's healing. As he's pushing me back now into my cruiser, pushing me back further, apparently I shot 2 rounds towards the vehicle, dead center and right above the steering wheel. I hit a TV that he stole in the back seat. Not the intended target, but I guess, I was unconscious and don't remember it at some point.
How many people would have liked to have shot their TV at various times in their life? But not then.
Yeah.
It's just an innocent TV. It wasn't showing a Celtics game. It wasn't
just
showing
sitting in the back
Bruins.
seat, not doing nothing. So then as he's pushing me back, I come off the end of my cruiser, and then I get launched about 15, 20 feet. This is on video. This ain't memory.
Right.
About 15, 20 feet, I land on my head.
Okay.
Well, that's a big head to land on, so it took the brunt of it. I did get knocked out. I'm on the ground, and now he proceeds to run over my legs.
At this point, you've been thrown away from the vehicle.
Yes.
But he's going out,
still
and
going
you're still in his way.
Yes.
So he goes over you like you're a speed bump.
Oh, I was a speed bump. On surveillance, you see that thing bump.
Yeah.
I'm not a small guy, so that vehicle went up.
And I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, but again, I'm thinking of the parking lot and the pothole that your head probably left in the parking lot.
I'm thinking about going upstairs and suiting up, Dave, getting my gun and my uniform,
Go out and
shine
shoot
my
you.
boots and see if we can go find these guys.
Yeah, they've been found.
At least find the TV. So you were involved basically in a nasty. You were run over by a truck twice.
Yeah, well, there's some squishing involved and the whole ripping off the foot with the wheel.
Yeah.
I had a small brain bleed. Now both my legs are all screwed up with the cartilage.
Yeah.
Between, or the bone's been all messed up, so it's bone on both knees. My good knee, which doesn't hurt, which is the bad knee because it's wobbly. It's missing, I forget now, MCL and ACL, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all screwed up. So I'm due for a double knee replacement and then some ligament work on my left side. And we had to wait because of the surgeries I went through with my foot, one reattaching it and finding out that wasn't holding because it had lost the blood supply and it had lost cartilage, which was just...
Dave has a good foot. He'll give it to you. Yeah. Give me your feet, Dave.
You don't want my feet. You don't want my feet. I know that your career as a sprinter is probably behind you.
Yes.
But
I kind of gallop along pretty well nowadays, getting there.
do you really?
Yes, I'm
Good.
very well. I'm at the
How long ago did this happen?
Summer of Love, just 2020 in August. Yeah.
So it's been a long 2 years, though.
Oh, 665 days, yes.
Okay.
But who's counting?
I'm not
I was going to
counting.
say 665 days, so not quite 2 years, but that's nasty. And,
Yeah.
and so you don't remember a lot of this, or do you remember, how much of it do you actually remember?
I remember pulling up. I remember my thoughts of something's going on, stop. I somewhat remember getting out, but then all I remember, it was like a TV screen, back to the TV. It was like a TV screen in the distance. All I see is the windshield area of the suspect vehicle. That's it. It was just like, you get that tunnel vision. And I just tunneled vision right into that apparently. And it's still, I don't see him moving. I don't see the driver moving. But all I see is the driver. And he's kind of got a twist in his body, like probably because he was turning into me. That's all I remember, the twist and him just flying in on me. I don't remember being hit. I don't remember being thrown, obviously, landed on my head. But then the next thing I do remember is waking up, looking up and seeing police officers, firefighters, EMTs, all just rushing around me. Back, forth, and they were just horrified. And I've never seen that in what I've been a cop for 25 years.
Right.
And I've never seen that in offices. Everybody's professional, dealing with whatever. Besides when Frankie almost shot me one time, which is a different story.
Yeah, cookout he deserved.
I never saw horror in anybody's face. And I just remember looking back and forth going, oh, this cannot be good. And then there was just a lot of me trying to gather what was going on.
Yeah.
And then realized everybody was trying to take care of me. But from the officers' side that were there and firefighters and the EMTs, they said I put up a fight from what I understand.
Oh, yeah.
But apparently I was just tossing bodies. They were trying to hold me down, but they had nowhere to grab because one knee's, pointing out to one side, the other knee's kind of half pointing out to the other side, the ankle's ripped off.
So you were fighting the paramedics. So you were
fighting
fighting the
anybody
people
that was near me,
who was trying to, because you were just in that mode of.
You know what it is, Dave? You want to know what it is? I can add to this.
Okay.
I think I can. People with head injuries, especially right at the moment, a lot of them become a little violent right at the moment of head injury. They start fighting with you and all sorts of weird stuff. So that's all I have to. That's the only input I have.
Well, I was sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, if anyone knows head injuries, Dale was dropped on his head a lot as a kid, and he was telling me. All right, so you go through this thing, you get horrific injuries.
Yes.
And now they say to you, we're going to have you do a critical incident stress debriefing.
No.
Oh, everybody saw
else.
you.
Well, I spent 3 weeks in the hospital.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the yin and the yang. Like, would it have been awesome if I had those guys coming to me, talking to me every day?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because at this point, now that I'm becoming clear-headed, I realize all the shit that they should have been doing the entire time. They should have been taking care of me. They should have had a therapist. I don't even know what you call them. Yeah. Counselors.
Therapist.
Yeah.
Counselor be the one.
Have these people coming in, whether it be just through my own insurance, whether it be, part of the incident, whether it be fellow officers. They left me out to dry. Sure, I had friends and family and everybody contacted me. But man, nobody held my hand. Nobody said, this is what's going on. This is how everything is.
So this is interesting because typical type of trauma that a cop deals with, I would think that being hurt on the job, or being shot on the job, or being shot by Frankie. Why did Frankie shoot you, by the way?
Good story. Good story.
I don't know. I was in detectives at the time, so I'm plain clothes. We're down in the Vic of Lawrence, and we're looking for a suspect, I believe, that had my description.
I contend the description was the exact same as Kyle.
Really?
So I'm on this back staircase.
So what do they say to you? This guy's a movie star, handsome. Anyway, so they go.
I had gone running up by myself. I was in detectives, running up this back staircase of like a 12-unit apartment building, and it's all the exterior staircase. So it just was like a maze. It was like something you see on Matrix or something. It was just stairs after stairs. So I'm working my way back down after checking all these stairs and the levels. And Frankie comes around the corner. Right. So all of a sudden he catches his eyes on me, draws on me, and he's just getting ready to shoot me. Now I'm still walking down. Frank's looking at me like he's getting ready to shoot me. Scared. Like I said, I don't see people being scared, but Frank had that look like, I'm about to shoot this guy. This guy's getting shot. And I had my gun out still, so I'm still walking around with a gun, and that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I don't have a uniform on. I just remember looking at Frank going, Frank, are you going to shoot me? Didn't respond. He still had that horrified look like, I'm going to shoot this guy.
Right. Hold on. Now let's see what Frankie's perspective is at this point. At this stage, is that all accurate?
That's pretty accurate.
Were you gonna shoot him?
Oh, I was going to shoot him. If he kept advancing on me, he was going down.
Okay, and you were doing this because he looked like the suspect or because he owed you money?
A little bit of both.
All right, so how did you, and so he said when he spoke to you, did that change anything?
Not originally.
No, I had to say it a couple times. I'm like, Frank, hey! Trying to snap him out of it. No. I'm like, Frank. And he looked up and over his gun like, who? He gave it the whole Tim Allen look. And I think he said, Carl, is that you? Farrington, is that you? And I'm like, Frank, are you going to shoot me? Or don't you dare shoot me. I just remember saying something like that. And then he apologized for the rest of the way down. I'm like, you were going to shoot me. Why are you apologizing so much?
Have you ever shot anybody?
No.
We don't admit to that stuff on the podcast, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Now the thing with this whole situation that both of us left out is Carl and I grew up together, went to school together, played football together.
So how would you remember what he looked like?
I know.
That's the difference between a story being tragic and being funny, is if nobody dies. And nobody died in that story, so it's
trigger
funny.
pull.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So your thing is that you should have been. Why didn't you get critical incident stress debriefing sent to you?
I think it was something that was just being set up. It wasn't really something that we ever did in Lawrence.
Okay.
Yeah, our department hadn't gotten it completely off the ground yet.
Okay. And
that's only 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of departments that are
65 days now. Yeah.
That's a lot. There's a lot of departments that are really behind the eight ball, because you would think Lawrence, Massachusetts, a very active community with violence and fires and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
And the community that I just retired from, we've had that probably in place for 10 years, at least 10 years, if not longer.
Which is a relatively sleepy. Well, compared to
Lawrence, it's a sleepy community.
Yeah,
I slept most of my career away, Dave. I don't remember most of my career because I was asleep.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
In my time in Lawrence, we had 2 critical incident stress debrief sessions prior to them getting this off the ground in Lawrence and Kyle's situation. Prior to that, we had a police officer suicide.
You didn't have one when the houses started to explode from the gas leaks?
No.
Really?
No. That was fun. I could have went through that one too.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I got a good story on that one if you want to hear it.
Sure.
I know we're off topic, but
sure.
So I'm heading to work. We get a page saying all officers respond to Lawrence, explosions all over the city.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from my home
and this is just to set the scene. It was fall of 3 years ago? 2 years
18,
ago?
was it 18? Yeah.
2018?
Yes, 2018, September.
And there were gas leaks. There was a gas leak and it got into several homes all over the city.
Overpressurized pipe.
Yes.
They hooked up to the main line, which had more pressure or something. So all the low pressure appliances in people's houses now were all under high pressure. So that little bit of gas that comes through your pipes to keep the pilot light
was coming through at a supersonic
was
speed.
Now getting blasted into the house. So everything was filling up with gas, basements, their kitchens.
And then people's houses would explode.
Yeah, then there would be a cause for ignition somewhere in the house, and houses all over the city were exploding. So I'm rushing down. I got my blue lights going.
Yep. And the 2 things is, first of all, when it first happened, cops, nobody knew what it was about. They just knew houses were exploding.
Yeah, they thought Al-Qaeda was in the area, Dave.
Yeah, I remember that, possible terrorists.
There you go.
And
I'm not saying we paused on that to let the city burn, because that's just the rumor.
The other thing about it is the gas company. I just want to get the right utility in here. It was with Columbia Gas, right?
I think it was one of their subcontractors.
I was Columbia Gas at the time.
Well, yeah, that was the gas company, but it was a subcontractor
who messed up. Yeah.
Yeah, they were replacing pipes all over the city. It was a renewal project, let's say.
It was pretty bad, and it was. I got to tell you, that was another. No, it wasn't fortunate for the people. What was it? Only one person died, or was it a bunch of? Was it one people, or was it more than one person at one address that died?
No, there was one person at one address. The guy that died, his younger sister, her bedroom was behind the wall of the oven that exploded. So it basically blew out the wall and everything through it. She was sitting on her bed, so she lost both of her legs.
Horrible. Anyway, so you're saying so. Cops in Lawrence are flying around. They don't know what to do. They just keep getting calls about this house exploded, that house exploded, this house exploded, that house exploded.
And fires everywhere besides being the explosions.
Right.
Just fires.
And people were hurt. Pets were lost. Anyway, so you're saying you're in the midst of this and you're driving to the scene.
Yes, I'm coming down the highway, and sure enough, usually back in the day when all the mill buildings were going, you'd see 12, plumes of smoke going up heavy. That eased up over the years, but when I was driving back down, it was 2 dozen plumes of smoke up into the air. So I'm going, it was early nights for me. So it was just after 4, I think, when it all started. So I'm now rushing in, and I got my little detail blue light in the back seat. I throw that up. Nobody's getting out of my way. I get into the city to the main incident location was just off the highway where the house blew up. I pull up there and it's pure chaos. The house is all over the streets, all over the neighborhood. And I'd been to that house before, and just to see the, nice community neighborhood, like all families, and it was just everywhere. So I then get ordered to Springfield Street for multiple fires over there. And you just hear new fire here, new fire here, new fire here on the radio. And I end up grabbing a monkey wrench off one of the trucks. And I'm like, somebody had said, shut off valves, they're all over pressurized. So I start running house to house to house with my little monkey wrench, shutting off gas mains. They're going to the house by the meter. I don't know what I'm doing. So I just remember any ones that were outside, I'm grabbing. I'm kicking indoors and going to the basements on the houses that didn't have the outside ones. So I remember going downstairs into this one basement, perfectly clean basement, which is something I've never seen in Lawrence, like nothing down there. I remember walking over to the thing. I paused for a second to take a picture with my hand shutting the valve. So I'm down there, maybe 5 seconds longer than the other buildings that I had been to. As I'm walking back, all of a sudden, I just felt something in me that I've never felt before. It was just like, am I anxious? Am I having a panic attack? All of a sudden, I just couldn't breathe. I was like, what's going on? Everything's getting foggy. And I'm like, breathe deep, Carl. You're a cop. You've been a cop now for 20-something years. Be a cop. Be a man. And I'm like pep talking myself as I'm staying in the basement.
Yeah.
So I'm pep talking. I'm like, it's going to be chaos when you get upstairs. You got to look strong. You got to look confident. But I couldn't. I was just, what is wrong with me? And I'm like calling myself names.
Yeah.
So as I start going up the stairs, I like talk to myself. All right, you can do this. You got this. Confident face. So I get upstairs and I'm all confident. I just go on about shutting off a couple of dozen gas mains into the houses just around Springfield Street. So later that night when we're kind of powwowing with everybody, I was talking to one of the firefighters and I said, no, I think I had a panic attack earlier. I don't know what happened, blah, blah, blah. And this firefighter looks at me and goes, that's why you're the Blue Canary. I said, what? He goes, you walked into a basement full of gas. If it's full of gas, there's no oxygen there. You were breathing gas. You almost died. I said, what? And it starts making sense. And I'm like, I'm staying in that basement, giving myself a pep talk. And all I was really doing was killing myself. He goes, yep.
You didn't notice the egg smell?
And that's what
the rotten egg smell?
No, at that point, there was
That's
5 fires. There was 5 fires around me. So there was just smoke everywhere, chaos. He gave me a good tongue lashing. He's like, let me guess, you were alone. Yeah, I was alone. I had a wrench.
Yeah, well, if you had a wrench, I don't know why.
He goes, so nobody would have known you were there.
Yeah.
God knows when they'll find you because, the whole neighborhood's going up. Yeah. Everybody's leaving. Everybody's been sent somewhere else. We evacuated the town.
Yeah, you know what? One thing, I think I mentioned it in the last podcast, cops are kind of, we're like ex-athletes and maybe fighters, and we get the big ego.
Yeah, you're all
rough and tumble. But firemen, on the other hand, they're all tradesmen. They're plumbers, they're carpenters, they're heating electricity type guys. They know every little nuance when you go into houses and how to get people out of houses, how to open doors. Most of the firemen I've met, they're very intelligent in regards to stuff like that.
Right.
They really are.
Yeah.
Hats off to the firemen.
And most cops, are what?
We're just like cavemen.
I'm just thinking he was so surprised that there was a clean basement in Lawrence that he couldn't. All right. So anyway, having critical incident stress debriefing, it sounds like it's a great thing. And I think a lot of times you guys looked at it like this is, for one thing, it goes against the police ethos of Dale's failing, is that cops should have no feelings, no empathy.
I never said that, Dave. I never said that.
I just had you and Frankie Bravo on a couple of months ago, and I think you were both saying that those Capitol Police that said they were traumatized by I know some people would call it the insurgency. I know you call it the tourist walk through the Capitol building.
Yeah.
But I remember you saying that they were pussies.
Yeah, the Capitol Police. We talked about that, and they're talking about trauma. Capitol Police, and I'm listening to the stories right here, and just knowing police officers actually worked in D.C. and the stories that they used to tell me about what happened in D.C. and Miami and places like that, and the Capitol Police, people are yelling and screaming at them. And you got to have a little backbone as a cop, but then again, you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know something? Something ain't right, brother. That was a fucked up call that I was on.
Right.
And I just hope that at some point I'm going to be able to kind of vent whatever I'm thinking or whatever I'm feeling with someone, because as long as if that stuff piles up through the years, before you know it, you got a cop who's divorced, alcohol, drug issues, all sorts of stuff are going on.
Let me go straight to this one. Deaths of despair, heart attacks, stress-related physical deaths, addiction, suicide. Big problem in the United States. How about for cops?
It's much greater.
Much greater.
All those factors are much greater. The percentage
times
of
100.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is it a factor when we see cops flip out, when cops shoot people over routine traffic stops, or
He's not a cop, is he?
Is that Dave?
yeah.
Yeah.
Just said routine traffic stop.
Yeah.
Really?
You don't think
Yeah,
there's a routine?
they're not always
There's
routine.
never routine.
Yeah, usually never.
All right.
Until it's over, then you can say, oh, that was an easy one. But going into it, while it's happening, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, technically mine, I guess, would be a car
routine.
stop also.
Yeah.
Yours
It was
was
routine.
not-
The guy was in a parking lot doing 1 mile per hour at first.
That wasn't routine. You had two cops approaching a bad guys in a van with stolen police.
We don't know
cars
that.
on
We don't know that.
TVs.
We were just stopping them to question, find out
Honestly,
if they're
Yeah, but-
involved.
you're going to stop somebody at a warehouse in the middle of the night, and you're going to expect that they're just going to be, well, unless they're parking. Unless they're two lovers parking, you pretty much,
It's go all night. That's
you're
what-
saying it's commerce. Okay.
So getting back to Farrington's thing, I was in the dispatch. First thing I hear is officer down. Now it's oh man, and then I get someone calling on the 911 line saying, "Hey, I just want to report some guy just cut out in front of me." And I'm like, "All right, sir, what what street are you on?" And he's like, "I'm just passing Springfield Street, and this guy just blew out in front of me." And I'm like, "That's the car that just hit Farrington."
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So it ended up, I'm like, if you can safely, just let me know where he's going, this, that, and the other thing. When they said officer down, we had offers from everybody, all of the surrounding towns. The air wing was already up in the air. They had already rode in on this car, and they ended up getting the car. Two of the guys fled at some point, but we did get one
on the crash scene, which was about a mile away.
Second one fled to, I believe it was Philadelphia, and he did a home invasion.
Oh, those Philadelphia people. That's typical night in Philly.
Yeah. Typical night in Lawrence.
It was a Pennsylvania town. It wasn't Philly, but
As he did that, the guy ended up having a bigger gun than him, and
There you go, brother.
dang it. And then the third one, happily for me, I was working the booking room the night that they brought in the third guy. It was the driver. So
Welcome to Lawrence.
So I got to call Kyle that night and let him know that the third one had finally gotten.
he thinks he was the only one that called me. I had 5 phone calls within minutes.
Yeah, I did a lot of dispatching, and as Frankie's telling that story, I'm saying to myself, this is what I probably would have done, knowing that everything's going bad, you got an officer down, the whole city's going to shit, and some nitwit calls me and says someone cut in front of me. My first inclination would be like, click, have a nice day.
Yeah.
But that would have been the worst thing to do because now you just threw away the suspect.
Right. And as you've said many times,
We cops, we make mistakes like that once in a while. We're human.
But as you've said to me before, sometimes little details that happen can lead to bigger things, like identifying the vehicle that was taken off and find out where it was going. So I would think if you're going to be trapped on a scene, guy would have been much better not running you over. Could he have avoided you?
No.
He was making it for the exit, and I was in the way of the exit and my cruiser, the back end of my cruiser. was.
Okay, so he wasn't going to be able to get out without
Without hitting
you.
the cruiser.
No, so, that explains it, Dave, right?
Well, I'm saying I think it's a terrible
Minutes
idea.
away, what was he going to do? I mean,
It's a terrible idea to run over a cop. I just think it's a bad idea. Here what we do is we get it when somebody's directing traffic and some soccer mom or some kid in a car who's on his learner's permit drives way too fast, goes around a blind corner and takes out a cop just directing traffic.
I got a quick story on that one.
I knew you would.
My first being hit by a car story. I was running after a guy. This was Lawrence when we used to have a couple of chases a night. Like you could pick what chase you wanted to be in at the time. Like, oh, this one's closer. I'll go to this chase. But the chase I was in, the guy ends up bailing out after T-boning my cruiser.
Yeah.
So as he T-bones me, I'm already out the door. And as I'm getting out the door, I realize my car is still coming towards me. I had to stiff arm the back end of my car because he's still pushing it as I'm trying to run around it. So as the guy sees me running around the back end of my cruiser after we were up on the curb in somebody's yard, he takes off. So I go running after him. Now we're in a chase. There were a couple of cruisers there. As I'm running across the street after him, all I remember, the next thought I had, I don't remember being hit. I don't remember pain. All I remember is laying on a windshield, and my gun was already out of my hand. And all I remember is on the windshield looking at the driver, which was one of my fellow officers. And I just remember pointing my gun at him saying, pull over, pull over. He ended up hitting me. It took me for like a 25-foot ride in the opposite direction of where the bad guy was running.
Yep.
So then I had to start all over again and run towards him. So.
You just bounced off the.
No, I stayed there. I was on the windshield until he stopped, and then I rolled off. And I was young then. The pain didn't really matter.
He made a statement as he was talking about his story. We used to have 2 or 3 chases a night.
Right.
And then, you know something, Dave? A good outcome of the defund the police movement has been cops are backing off a little bit and saying, whoa.
Oh, man.
I'm not getting involved in some of this stuff. And they're starting to think a little bit more and saying, hey, you know something? We get no support anywhere. Why am I going to get on a foot chase, a car chase, and put myself and possibly other officers at risk for a situation that I can't control?
Here's the thing, Dale.
Yes. I'm never going to get off the defund the police movement.
I know you're not.
So,
I know you're not. I'm just going to say I know this one. I don't know this one, but the fact that this one knows this one, I'm going to guess there's not a whole lot of brain power there between them. So I don't think there's that much thinking that goes into it.
You want to know something? And I didn't make the point earlier. We talked about in a different podcast. We talked about active shooters and how smaller towns, kind of like podunk towns where the cops aren't involved in a lot of stuff, they're more likely to kind of make mistakes and maybe make the wrong call. You do an active shooter in towns like Boston, Lawrence, Chicago, in communities like that, you got hardened, seasoned, aggressive police officers who are going to go into that school and they're going to take care of business in a heartbeat. That's the difference between a town like Lawrence and the town like where I was a cop. Totally different mentality, totally different approach.
What do you think? I mean, do you think it's just the fact that you're in Lawrence, you see more action? Do you think it just keeps you sharper so that when situations occur, you don't hesitate?
What would you do if you were shot at?
Oh, I've been in this situation.
After he cleans his diapers, what do you think he'd do?
I would not. Here's what I did a training in Salisbury with a citizen training where I was the guy in the car during the traffic stop who turns and shoots the cop with the soap pellets. And afterwards, the chief said, okay, now you be the cop. And I said, but I know what's going to happen. The whole idea was a surprising thing. But he said, he goes, go ahead and do it. So I did my approach correctly, which is to stay near the vehicle, as close to the vehicle so you cut down the angle. But then once that guy spun, I jumped back. Now, I was supposed to turn so that they're getting, I guess, what's your side or and plus you get away quicker. And
I wouldn't agree with that. You don't want to take a bullet up the side of the vest. But go ahead with your story.
I wouldn't have got out of the car. I would have went home and said, fuck it. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I didn't turn. I jumped back. The guy spun and I just jumped back because that was my reaction and I got shot. So that's what I did when I got shot. But I wasn't really shot. It didn't really burn as it hit the body, but I'm sure it would have been the same result. I'm sure I could do that. I'm sure that I could do that drill 10 times. And I would have done it exactly the same way because my instinct would have taken over.
So in Lawrence, we had many insurrections every night, especially on the weekends. It was all the club scene. Yeah. Just fight in front of every club, shooting in front of every club.
Not the clatter.
I think once in front of the clatter. That was about it. But normally, every weekend, it was just pure chaos. They'd have assigned club cars. But way back 15, 20 years ago, it was just a sector car. It was a city rover. It was like, all right, we're going to need more down here. So we're on one scene, and all of a sudden, it was just fights everywhere. And I'm talking to the sergeant, and you hear a bullet boom, right over our head, and you hear the gunshot. And the sergeant looks at me and goes, they're shooting at us, aren't they? Didn't even slow down, didn't hesitate at all. And I said, yes, sir. Sir, there to be another fight over there. And there's officers down there all running towards that. And he just was like, one of these days, one of these will get me, and I'll be happy.
It's a funny line, but it's a good point because when guys are in combat, when they're dealing with horrible things, whether they're firefighters or cops or whoever, there's that dark sense of humor that keeps you going. And for years, cops were left on their own to, they had the shrink that they wouldn't go to, famously, because for the reasons that we talked about, the fact that there was a fear that it was going to go upstairs, but also the fact that cops didn't necessarily want to deal with admitting they didn't want to talk to a shrink years ago. Is it still that way? Is it still a thing that cops resist, even though they know that it's going to stay between them and the third party?
Guys, me and Carl's age, it's still somewhat of a resistance. the newer guys that are coming out of the academy now, this is what they're trained on. This is, they hear it from day one of the academy. I was resistant up until I knew, hey, I don't have to go into the police department. No one's going to see me. I can get some stuff off my, okay, I can deal with that.
And your heart attack, I know you had the heart attack on the job, but it was at the beginning of the shift. It wasn't like in the middle of an incident. It was fairly recent. It was
December 14th.
I guess you would say they were all bad, but you had a pretty severe heart attack.
Yeah.
Which was amazing because I know a lot of people didn't think you even had a heart. And but so it's a good thing. The safety of knowing it's not going to go against their record. It's not going to be taken. It's not going to come back and bite them. Do you think older cops still have a resistance to it?
I resisted. If they had showed up, got a bunch of the guys involved. I mean, I was in the hospital 3 weeks. I was kind of a, caged rat at that point. They could have come and talked with me and helped me talk it through. I didn't realize how much everybody else was affected for so long.
Right.
And then I started thinking about it. I watch the videos and I see everything they've been through. And it's like, holy cow, could you imagine if I went through that?
Yeah.
So I've only seen sporadically, like Frank's involvement that night. I've talked to one of the other guys, the veteran that was on scene. I don't even know if I talked to the rookie that was on scene that was there initially. Oh, and if I could get into one more, we had a military vet. I forget what service he was in, but he was an EMT, highly trained for combat medical. So he ends up getting rushed over to the scene. Only been on for a few weeks, but he made statement to his FTO, get me there. I'm an EMT. We can get there before the ambulance. Sure enough, he did. So he shows up. He's putting a tourniquet on me. He's doing the combat wrap around my ankle, saving the blood. He's having everybody jump on my back, holding me down. But could you imagine being on the job for mere weeks,
right,
saving a fellow officer?
Right. Unfortunately, somebody comes back from doing combat medical. They're good. They're good to have. They're good to have in a bad situation, because something like this that comes up with your foot, that probably is something that happens in battle enough, and not very often, thankfully, for cops. That's a thing too about being a cop, particularly in a town like yours, is crazy stuff happens, and it can happen at any time. Do you think that cops? I know in Dale's community, I know cops who are in the military sometimes come into the profession having come from the military with PTSD. In Dale's community, there was only one officer who had PTSD. There was somebody who had to work with Dale. Let's say this. Do cops develop PTSD on the job?
Yes.
Dale?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I think that in communities, say the community that I was in, which was probably 1/4 of what, say, officers in Lawrence went through, you'd probably see more officers in that community potentially have it than, say, in my community. But then everyone's an individual. What affects me might not affect Frankie, or vice versa. So it's really hard to say, but I think bigger communities, Chicago, LA, New York, places like that, they probably have a crisis problem every single day with officers. Now, whether or not the officers are getting the help they need, who knows?
Right. It seems like, and I'm going to go back to my other question. When police flip out during a non-routine traffic stop where the person is, let's say, well, there was a case in, I think it was Alabama or Arkansas, with a guy who he owed child support, and he got pulled over for something, and he thought that the cop was going to be after his child support or something, and he started to run away from the cop, and he either pulled a muscle or he was just out of shape, or maybe both. But he was basically limping away from the cop, and the cop shot him in the back of the leg. It seemed to be an overreaction, but it was one of these things that was caught on videotape. When you see cops in situations, and I've seen some of these videos, and I think, no, the cop is acting the way the cop is trained to act. But then other times I see situations where it seems like the cop didn't have to do what he did. Do you think cops flip out on people because of other things that are happening in their life and the stress building up on them?
I think a lot of it's hindsight. I mean, you know the story. Cop didn't know the story that was on scene.
Right.
And whatever altercation occurred between them in so many types of different incidents, it's violent to him. Somebody's attacking him. The incident's happening. So it escalates in his mind. This is what I got to do. I'm protecting myself. I'm going home tonight. Then all of a sudden it can flip on a dime, like, oh, he was just running because of child support. Or he was just trying to get away. He wasn't really trying to fight you. Everybody has their story about the incident, but in that officer's mind, he's going home tonight.
Right. So he thinks he's in danger, but the guy's just running away.
In extreme situations, the Chauvin incident, that's a kind of a rogue cop.
Yeah.
And I think the eyes of people, maybe a situation like that kind of stereotypes other cops. To be a cop, you have to be in a situation. There's a dynamic in a certain situation that the general public doesn't see, doesn't feel. So in some of those incidences, it may look excessive, but it isn't. But then again, there are incidences when cops do use excessive force, and it makes every other cop look like we're out of our mind, which we're not.
Okay, so
I'm just as normal as you, Dave, and so on our two guests here today.
Unfortunately, I know Frankie, and I know you're lying about that. But here's the thing. All right, so you're saying this. You have a bad day. You have a lot of stress on you. You've got a bad day because your wife has spent your Nintendo money. Your commanding officer, your executive officer is an imbecile.
Yeah.
And you're just sick to death of these soccer moms who speed and then tell you that they're paying your salary.
The worst thing that most cops do is they just say, why don't you just shut the fuck up and get out of here? That's kind of a typical response from a cop who's been on for a couple of years. Just shut the fuck up, get in your car and leave.
Have you guys ever told somebody to shut the fuck up? Person who didn't deserve it, or person who deserved it?
1,000 times.
1,000 times. That's common.
Easily.
That's like nothing in law enforcement world.
And I love when they get mad over that, too. It's like, I could stay and we could review what just occurred, and I'll come and find every crime that was involved. Or go and go on your way, because that's what the victim of this incident wants, is you just to move on your way.
This is the exact tone and strategy I use with my 16-year-old daughter. It's well, we could talk about this for a while, and then I'll take away your screen time.
It's universal.
Or, yeah. All right, so you don't think that the buildup of stress affects the way that...
Consciously, no. Possibly subconsciously at times.
Okay. It just seems like cops are carrying around a lot of stress that maybe it'd be good. It'd be a good thing for police departments internally to give guys a bigger stress relief other than the traditional methods of drinking heavy and other things. Because you're all men, you're all macho. I know you're not all men anymore, but you know what I'm saying? The whole idea of like, you can't let things in. It just seems like the more things that you could do to help you guys with stress, the better off we'd all be.
Maybe we get some free gift certificates to the local strip clubs, Dave, and stuff like that.
Like I said, the
Lawrence prostitutes maybe do a freebie one night for all the Lawrence cops. Something like that, Dave.
That's
I think every street in Lawrence needs a safe space for officers.
Oh yeah, safe space. I'm looking at him, and he's like, "What
I know.
the fuck?
I know.
Suck it up."
I know. I was thinking that. I thought I might have 2/3
Yeah,
of
there's
the
no
room.
safe spaces in law enforcement, brother. You just have to kind of.
How about the woke? You ever run into like a 20-something-year-old or who's just like, you can't do this to me. This is not my safe space.
No, I've never run into something like that.
You haven't yet.
No, I have.
Oh, you have? Okay. How about you?
Not so much on the woke aspect of it. It's more of, you don't have the right. It's all the anti-police. Not so much as, them caring about themselves. It's more like they're just more against you.
Yeah, that makes me snap, Dave, when they start doing that. Yeah, I'll admit it.
I can't imagine what it would be like having to listen to this nonsense and have a gun on you and know you can't really use it.
I think you're getting way off target, Dave.
Well,
but anyway, you did a
That's
good
why
job
we're trained
today.
and you're not.
All right, let me leave you with this. This is my last question. What do people not understand? People like me, because we know people like me, the general public, we all know that we could teach you all a thing about policing. We all know your job. But what do people like me not know about a cop's life?
I think that they have to understand that cops are just like them. Cops have bad days. They have bad days. We see bad things. They see bad things. Unfortunately for cops, we see it 365, 24/7 in many instances. And there's very difficult times when we have to decompress. And if we don't decompress, if we don't step away from the job, it builds up. And then maybe you, Dave, might be the unfortunate victim of a cop's outlash, or a cop maybe yelling at you at a traffic stop or something like that. I think if you just understand that cops are human, cops have families, cops really want the best for most situations. And sometimes when they don't see that situation going in a pattern that's going to be beneficial for everyone, they get a little frustrated and sometimes they act out. But usually when they go home, I've apologized to people on the street before. If I said something to them on a bad night and I run into them a couple of days later or something like that, I'll say, "Hey, brother, my bad. I was having a bad night. Nothing personal.
All right. Guys, thanks very much. This has been Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. We want to thank Farrington and Frankie Bravo from the Lawrence PD. I'm Dave Rattigan. That's Dale Lawrence. Share us, like us, do all that stuff. We'll see you next week.